So did I have boys try to deceive me from my education? The time for intimate relationships will come. A big welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. If it's your first time visiting, I welcome you too. My name is Bridget Mutwale Wint. I'm recording this video to respond to some questions that came to me from an amazing group of kids from Zambia, St. Dorothy in particular. It's so exciting for me to get an opportunity to look back at my life and see how God has led me so far, and then to take some of those lessons and pass them on to younger kids. So back to the questions I'm about to answer today. This group of boys and girls downloaded my videos and watched them and listened to the podcast. They were so excited when they heard me mention that I'm from Kasempa, Zambia. And so they had so many questions for their teacher. And when their teacher contacted me and said, these girls and boys have so many questions, and right away I said, please encourage them to ask any question they have and send them to me. Don't leave out anything. Nothing is too little or funny or too sensitive. And when I read the questions, I was so touched by the depth and the thoughtfulness behind these questions. And I actually see myself in these kids. So I know you'll be watching boys and girls at Remnant Mission in St. Dorothy. And I'm very thankful that you took the time to ask the questions that you have asked. So here we go. I trained as a teacher, as a high school teacher in Zambia at Nkrumah Teachers Training College. That's after I graduated from Mukinge Girls in grade 12. After I taught at Mukinge Girls for 5 years, I taught sciences there, biology and physical science. So I proceeded to go to Bible College in Cape Town, which is one of my favorite cities. I just love Cape Town. But anyway, I did a year of theology there. Afterwards, I got a scholarship to come to the United States to do my master's degree in Christian counseling. So that's my background. So they wanted to know, how did you manage to get an education like that? My love for education started when I was very little. I remember when I was about 3 or 4 years old. Most of my family members attended school by that time. They were old enough to attend school. And I remember going to the school, wanting to be there and to start grade 1. But of course, I was 4 years old or 3 years old. It wasn't the right age for me to start first grade, but I had such a thirst for school. I kept trying every year. And eventually, when I was 5, the teacher said, you know what, we need to let this kid in. So they allowed me to start school when I was 5 years old. In those days, there were no nursery schools, there were no preschools. In the village in Kasempa, in Kantenda, where I grew up, that was the beginning of the deep desire and thirst that I had for school. I learned how to read pretty early by asking questions my aunts who knew how to read, or from uncles or cousins, until I figured out how to read on my own. And the excitement for me was when I started to read, I realized that books opened up a whole new world that I didn't know about. So I started to read these stories about all kinds of places, and I was just so mesmerized by all these other places that I'd never heard of. But I went there through my books. I think subconsciously that started the process of my desire to travel as well. So that is the background that I wanted to share, that because I want you to know, my precious African girl who is in the village where I'm from and where I grew up, that yes, I am you. And I had a deep desire to get an education, and therefore I made it a priority. Let's move on now to the next question. Did you have challenges in your education? Of course I had challenges. The village where I grew up had no electricity. So to study, like everybody else, at night we had to use the candle. And of course, a candle is not something that will last you the whole night if you wanted to study for several hours. So I had to plan, just like everybody else, to do my schoolwork when it was daytime. And if I needed to do a little bit extra, I knew the limitation. So I chose not to leave my work until nighttime. Living in the village, as I've shared before, was for me an exciting life, because that was the life I knew. Up to today, even though I don't live there anymore, I look back and I'm just so grateful that God allowed me to be raised in an environment like that, that was safe, family friendly, and I had many friends. So living in the village to me was a joy because my grandparents made it that way. So the challenges were there, but at that time, I really didn't think of them as challenges. It's just how we lived. We all had to go in the morning to the well or to the river to draw water for us to use during the day. And then, of course, the water wasn't that good. My grandfather insisted that we boil it. We didn't know why, but now I understand that he wanted to make sure that the water was clean for us to drink. So yes, there were challenges, just like I'm sure the challenges you face today. Every child in Africa, for those who do not know, many children in the village, first of all, have to do their chores in the morning. Some have to walk for miles to draw water from the well, and then they clean the dishes, and then they have to make sure that their surroundings are swept before they can go to school. So it is tasking, and I understand. However, those challenges were not enough to stop my desire for school, and I pray that it will be the same for you. Whatever challenges you are facing, don't allow those challenges to be the thing that stops you from pursuing your education. I was raised by my grandparents from the time I was 2 years old, so they are the ones who saw me through school. However, there are so many people that contributed to my education. My mother contributed, my uncles contributed, I have aunts who contributed. I can assure you right now that I am not self-made. I shared in another episode that my grandfather was a retired medical practitioner. In other words, he was really like a doctor in colonial times, except they didn't give him that title. My grandfather was a strong believer in educating both girls and boys. In other words, I didn't know that there's anything I can't do just because I'm a girl. He definitely inspired me to go as far as I've gone. So I wouldn't say that they had a lot of money to send me to school. They made sure I had what I needed to succeed. But at the end of the day, even people that have a lot of money don't necessarily succeed in school. So there's more to it. But we did have some hard times as well. There were times when we didn't have some of the basic things, especially during that period in the 80s when the economy was so bad. Everybody was struggling, and we struggled too. But my grandparents made sure that we had something to eat and that we had enough to get us to school. So the next question is, how was your relationship with God? So I was raised in the church. My grandparents were Christians, and every Sunday we were all required or encouraged to go to church. So I grew up in the church. I started singing in the choir by the time I was 5. I enjoyed that very much. So in many ways, I'm a church kid. I remember confessing Christ as my Savior for the first time when I was in grade 7. And after that, my grandfather actually baptized me in Nkenya on a river. And that was a very, very special moment. It wasn't until I was at Mukinge Girls in grade 10 when I understood for the first time what Christ did on the cross for me personally. This lady explained the gospel in such a way that I completely understood it for the first time. I recognized that I was a sinner in need of a savior. I remember going back from the assembly hall at Mukinge Girls and going back to my room in one of the dormitories. We shared that room. I think there were like 8 of us in there, but I managed to just get some chitenges, which is, for those who don't know, it's the Zambian traditional cloth like what I have wrapped on my head. I just wrapped it around my bunk bed and went in my bed for some privacy and just wept before God. At the end of that afternoon, I remember coming out of my bed and I knew that I had met with the living God and my life changed. My life changed completely. Going to church was no longer just a religious act. It was a relationship with God. And up to today, as a 50-year-old woman, I remember that day when I was 15 years old. And it's as clear as today because I found Jesus, or actually Jesus found me and made himself known to me as my Father. And so I've been walking with him since then, not perfectly, but consistently. Not perfectly, but consistently. Another question that was asked was, and I found this one really interesting, are there any other girls from your community that are successful? Oh my goodness, of course there are. There are so many of my friends that I grew up with that are successful business women, teachers, social workers. They are all over Zambia. They are all over the world. Okay, so I'm not the only one. But let's kind of define success. For me, success is fulfilling what God has put you on this earth for. So it's going to look different for everybody. Okay, so not everyone will be a teacher like me. Not everybody will be a counselor like me. Your success may be to be a nurse. For someone else, it could be in government, okay? For somebody else, you might be the first woman president of Zambia. For somebody else, you could be a doctor. For somebody else, success means being a farmer. I really, really, really want you to understand that. So, pursue your own path. Yes, I ended up here in the United States of America. Even though I had a desire to travel, I had a desire to see other places, like I said. All I know, even up to today, is to do the next best thing. And the way I've come to understand God, He usually doesn't show us the whole way because we need to trust Him. And it really takes those small steps of obedience to discover God's will for your life. There's a reason why you've asked these questions, and I'm so thankful that you have. You want to know how I got here. That's actually one of the other questions that I was supposed to address later. I might as well address it here. How did I go from the village in Kasempa to the United States of America? And is that the ultimate success for everybody? Let me tell you, I got here with a lot of hard work, a lot of tears, a lot of prayers, a lot of sleepless nights. And this video would be too long if I went into every detail. But no one's journey is smooth all the way. There will always be high points and low points. When I first came to the United States of America, I came to study. I was on what's called a work-study scholarship. You go to school full-time and you work part-time, okay? So between school and work and assignments, it can be rough. And there've actually been students that have come to the US and tried it and it just got too difficult and they gave it up. Okay, so you must understand that it wasn't an easy road for me, but it's the path that God had chosen for me. I remember the first year I arrived in the US, I called one of my uncles and said, I can't do it. First of all, I was really homesick. I wanted to go back home. I wanted to go back to my family, to the familiar. I couldn't get used to this new environment. It was cold. There was snow all the time. You know, I arrived in winter time. So it was rough. And I remember calling one of my uncles that I looked up to and I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I think I'm going to come back home. And he told me to hang in there. And he said, give it time and give it your best. So all that to say, success is going to look very different for every human being on earth. You have to follow your path. The biggest advice I can give you is do those small steps with excellence, because it's those little steps that teach you to be reliable. It's those small steps that distinguish you from other people so that you can proceed in certain areas. In other words, if you are in 12th grade, put in all your effort and try to do the best work you can so that your results will be good enough to compete with other people from any part of the world. And that way, more opportunities will open up for you. That's the best piece of advice I can give as far as preparing for your future. Take small steps of obedience and see where God leads you. Be prayerful. Listen to his direction and his prompting. Listen to godly advice in your life. And you will see God unfolding his will for your life. I was thinking about King David. He started out as a shepherd boy, but he was obedient in the things that he was asked to do. He did not know for quite a while that he was going to be king. Even after he got anointed to be king, it was a while before he actually took the throne. But you see him being obedient, being the one that took care of his father's sheep, being the one that took lunch to his brothers when his father asked. Even the day that he went and knocked out Goliath, it was an ordinary day of just being obedient to his dad. And when he got there and he heard Goliath throwing insults at the armies of God, something stirred deep inside him and he said, no, something needs to be done. But you see, his preparation did not start that day. It started when he was a little shepherd boy guarding his father's sheep. He saw God work miracles that prepared him for that day when he went. He was courageous enough to conquer Goliath. So don't dismiss the small things. I'm sure your teachers are encouraging you to study. People in your life, maybe your parents or your guardians, require of you certain things to help out in the home. Don't despise those things. They are part of your training. My grandmother would often ask me to pound maize. So those who may not know what that means, the staple food in Zambia is nshima. And nshima is made out of cornmeal or maize meal. And in the village, when you don't have a grinding mill to grind the flour out of that maize, you do your own pounding in a mortar and a wooden stick. And that was one of my favorite jobs. I wasn't very good at washing dishes, and my grandmother even knew that. She's like, when it comes to dishes and sweeping and all that, like, just leave her alone. It's not going to happen. There are things she loves to do. So anytime my grandmother needed somebody to pound maize, that would be my chore. And I did it well. Up to today, if you ask me to pound some maize for you, I know exactly what to do. So I learned to do that job with excellence. Well, I don't have to pound maize today, but those same skills that I learned in pounding maize, about being consistent, about being detailed, all those skills I'm able to use somewhere else. So don't despise the small chores and the big chores that you are asked to do. They are training you. Here's another one that just touched my heart. Did you have boys deceive you from school? Many are getting pregnant before finishing school. What made you not to? In your days, were there girls getting married before finishing school? Wow. So this is a deep one, right? And very personal, a little sensitive, but I'm going to answer it. Of course, just about every girl out there knows what it means to be pursued by the opposite sex, by boys, okay? I mean, it's practically unavoidable. When I was growing up in my village, there were many girls that ended up being pregnant, and in those days, when you got pregnant, you were not allowed to go back to school. I know things have changed in Zambia now, and that's a good thing. So did I have boys try to deceive me from my education? Of course I did. Primary school, in college, in other areas of life. It comes with the territory of being a girl and a woman. The only place where I felt safe, protected, was when I was at Mukinga Girls. We were taught by Christian teachers who are so respectful. Even up to today, I look up to them. Most of my teachers, I consider them as my mentors, both women and men. Other than Mukinga Girls, throughout my primary school, it even got worse when I got to college. The first week of college was known as Gold Rush Week. The second year students would rush to see which first year student they would capture as a girlfriend. So you can imagine, I was coming from Mukinga Girls, where I was sheltered and innocent, into this situation. The same things I'm going to tell you today are the same things I would tell my children. The way you resist the temptation of being deceived into a relationship that you shouldn't be involved in is you make the decision in advance. That's really it. You make the decision in advance, because in the heat of the moment, you will fail to do the right thing. So make a resolve in advance that you are not going to allow a boy's lies to prevent you from pursuing your educational goals. As a Christian, I had to be prayerful about it. The fact that I became a Christian when I was only 15, I think helped me and protected me from a lot of stuff. And especially when you see all your friends have boyfriends And in some situations, their boyfriends buy them all kinds of extras, makeup and powder and all that. The temptation to go for that type of relationship, even when you know it's the wrong thing, the temptation is high. You have to decide in advance. Listen, girls, the time for intimate relationships will come. The devil would like you to believe that you're missing out on a lot if you don't get involved. It's a lie. You have plenty of time in future after you get married to enjoy the intimacy that comes with a marriage. You make your goals in advance. How far do you want to go in education? I know there are many hurdles, but decide in advance. How far do you want to go? So that when that door opens, when God opens that door for you, He will find you prepared. So decide in advance. This is the path I'm going to take. Pray for strength from God to stand your ground, no matter who is asking. Let me tell you a story. After I finished grade 12, I went and lived in Lusaka with my mom for a while. One day I was coming back from Longacres to visit my friend there. And as I walked, there's this road called Jacaranda. It's between Ridgeway Post Office and Kabwata. Here comes a white guy in a car and he pulls up next to me. Remember, I'm only 18. He shouted something and I looked around thinking there was somebody else, but no, I was the only one there. So I figured he was talking to me. So I looked over and he goes, "You are such a pretty girl. Please jump into my car. I want to make you my girlfriend forever." At that moment, I didn't even answer. I just kept walking. I knew this was a trap, right? So I kept walking. The man literally stopped his car and started driving very, very slowly next to me. In the meantime, he blocked the traffic all the way back, as far back as I could see. People behind him were getting angry because he was blocking the traffic. And when they drove up and realized it was because of me, they started getting angry at me. And I had done nothing. Eventually, we got to the T-junction where I was turning left and I think he had to make a right. So the best he could do was, "I want you to come to my hotel," he shouts. "I'm in this hotel, come and meet me, I'll be waiting for you. I want to make you my girlfriend forever." Of course, I didn't go. But I've often looked back at that day of my life, and I know for a fact that had I given in to that invitation, my life wouldn't have been how it turned out. Because first of all, I was 18, very young. This man must have been in his 30s or something like that. Secondly, I didn't know who he was. He was foreign, in a vehicle. And even though that seemed flashy and inviting, he showered me with all those words about how pretty and beautiful you are. That's flattering, especially to an 18-year-old who's just trying to find herself. But I often wonder what that would have done to my life had I jumped into that car, or had I made up my mind later that evening to go to that hotel and find that man. There will always be somebody trying to derail you from your purpose. Many girls end up in situations where they are caught up in a relationship that they never planned for. So my word of advice to you is, make up your mind in advance. Choose what you want to do and stick with it. And pray that God gives you the grace to resist. The other question was, how did you get your education at Mukinge if you came from the farm? In those days, I'm not sure if that's how it is today. For you to go to Mukinge Girls, your grades had to be at a certain level. The first time I wrote my grade 7 exam, I didn't qualify to go to grade 8. And I'm not even sure why. Maybe I didn't understand the material or whatever, but I failed. So I had to repeat grade 7 until I got to write the exam again, and then I passed with good grades. So yes, anyone can go to Mukinga Girls as long as your grades are good. How can somebody from the farm, or basically saying from the village, Mukinga Girls is a mission school. It was established for the purpose of training children like me and like you. So I'm sure there's an opportunity for you there. I know there are other issues like school fees and all that, but anyone can go to Mukinga Girls. As you can see, I, a village girl, did go to Mukinga Girls. And so can you. Work hard and make sure that your results are good enough for you to qualify to go to Mukinga. The next one is, did you have a vision to get married to a type of husband you have? Oh my word. That's a really good question. Since I was a little girl, I've actually always wanted to have my own family. Yeah, I'm one of those. But marriage, like I said, wasn't my goal in life. I prayed and hoped that I would have my own family and that I would meet a man who would love me enough and that I would love them as well to get married to. But I never had a specific vision. Oh, no. Let me explain a little bit more, okay? Are you close? This is now special. Listen. So, did I have a vision for the type of man I wanted to marry? Let me think about that. Yes, I actually had a list of qualities that I wanted in a husband because I did want to get married. I love children and I wanted to have my own children, but I wanted to have them with the right person. After I became a Christian, that was one of the things that I prayed about, that God would bring the right man my way. But the funny thing is, the little list that I had such specific features and qualifications that I look back now and just laugh. So, the first thing was he had to be a Christian. He had to love Jesus like I do. He had to be taller than me. I don't know why, but that was just what I desired. Thirdly, he had to be darker than me. Why I had that on my list, I don't know. But apparently, when I made that list, that was really important to me. So that was my vision. I think there were a few more details about what tribes I was considering, and I had in my mind a type of guy that I hoped would be my husband. And God answered my prayers and gave me the person that he chose. And that person loves the Lord. He is tall, but he is definitely not darker than me. If I had to choose for myself at that age, I would have chosen someone else. So when he showed up, and after a few dates, we realized that we had very similar visions and that God was leading us together, I just had to let go of that childish requirement of him being darker than me. But God, in his plan, shifted that story to bring the man that I'm married to. Or to say, if you desire to get married, commit your ways to the Lord. In the meantime, continue gaining the skills that you need to be a professional woman, if that's what you want to be a nurse, if that's what you want to. Never, and this is This is a big one for my girls. Never put your life on hold for a man. Be your own person. Be the person that God is creating out of you. Be a woman of excellence. Be a woman of our word. So that when the right person comes, you are prepared. So yes, I did have a vision in my head. And if I had to choose on my own, I would have chosen someone else when I was younger. But God was inching me from Zambia to South Africa, and all along, my husband over here was praying for a wife. For 7 years, he would pray and fast every Friday, asking God for a wife. And all along, God was moving me closer and closer to the United States until we met through a mutual friend. And he loves to tell that testimony. I hope one day he'll be able to tell it to you. My vision is not always God's vision for me. Your vision for what you want in life is not always God's vision for you. Whatever he wants for you, seek his face, seek his kingdom first, and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. He will bring the right person at the right time, if that is God's will for you. The last question I'm going to look at, and this is probably the hardest one for me to answer. I am an orphan. How can I finish school without parents to support me? So this touches my heart. I cannot say that I've walked in your shoes before, though I've had many losses myself, including the loss of my grandparents. So I know what it means to grieve a loved one. So most of you who ask these questions, I'm aware that you are orphans or in vulnerable situations. And so this question is really, really important. God's heart is for the orphan and the widow. It's all over scripture. And so as a Christian, I strongly believe that it is our mandate, it is our calling for all of us Christians to contribute to the care of orphans and widows. That is what our Heavenly Father calls us to do. So this is very, very close to my heart, because several years ago, my husband and I felt called to go back to Zambia to minister to orphaned children. And we did that for about 7 years. We cared for orphans who lived with caregivers and helped out with school supplies and groceries and encouraged them in their education. And later on, we took in orphaned children and abandoned children and raised them ourselves for a while. That is the most sacred and challenging ministry I've ever done. So yes, I know what it means to have a baby that was abandoned, placed in my arms for care. You are an orphan with no parents. My heart goes out to you, and I pray that God will raise more of us, more people, to respond to the plight of the orphan children in Zambia, in Africa, and throughout the world. Imagine if each of us helped just one child. What a difference that would make. So I hear you, and I'm praying for you, and I ask that you pray that God will raise up more people, maybe even somebody who is watching this video, to ask the question, how can I help? You would be surprised. A simple care package with some soap, some sanitary pads, some powder, a lip gloss or lipstick, a pack of books and pencils. How much of a difference that can make in a child. I know firsthand. because my husband and I did that for several children. Wait a minute, I said that's the last question. There's actually a couple more questions that I wanted to answer. Another one of you said that I'm dull. Can I just forget it and go and get married? And my answer to you is no. You're still young. You just have a different learning style. Find ways to study better. Ask for help from your teachers and see if there's a better way you can sharpen your skills of studying. Please don't give up. Let me go back a little bit to the issue of parents pressuring their children to stop their education to go and get married. I pray that this thing is eradicated in my lifetime. Girl child education is very, very close to my heart. And we need, all of us, we need to help sensitize families out there that don't believe in the education of a girl child. When they see them as just marriage material and nothing else, that's a big problem. We are squashing the dreams of these children if we don't encourage them to excel. So let's talk to parents. Let's talk to people in our communities to sensitize these parents and caregivers about the value of educating the African girl. We carry a lot on our shoulders. The better educated we are, the better choices we make. The next question is, why did you stop teaching? I stopped teaching because I wanted to go to Bible college. I felt a very, very strong, distinct call from God to go to Bible college to further my skills of counseling so I could minister to people. So I loved my teaching job at Mukinge. I enjoyed teaching those incredible girls. Many of them are still my friends today. But I needed to move on to what I believe God called me to do. So it has been amazing looking at your questions and answering them. You're welcome to seek clarification. I don't know all the answers, and where I'm not sure, I will consult and I'll get back here and bring back an answer. The reason I'm putting this back on YouTube is I know that the questions you have, many other African girls have those same questions, and I'm hoping that my encouragement will inspire another girl child to try their best. Prayer is that many African girls will watch this video and feel encouraged and feel inspired to pursue their dreams, to seek after God with all their hearts, and to dream big. It's been a pleasure chatting. If you've enjoyed this video, please share it because somebody else might be encouraged too. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell button so that when I post another video, you will be alerted so you don't miss out on anything. May God show himself to be the true answer to all the questions you ask. I am your friend, Bridget Mutwale Wind, saying goodbye for now and God bless.